This is a public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2020 annual operating plan. The meeting is being held in accordance with the provisions of Ordinance 49318, which was approved on March 2nd, 1959. And it states in part, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment shall review the proposed budget with the heads of departments and other agencies and hold at least one public hearing thereon after giving at least 5 days' notice in the City Journal. The required notice was published in the St. Louis City Journal on Tuesday, April 9th and April 16th, and in the Post-Dispatch on Saturday, April the 6th, 2019. So this public hearing will...
Madam Mayor, we need to formally open the meeting, calling
Okay.
the roll.
So this meeting will begin now, and we'll call the roll.
Mayor Cruzen,
I'm here.
Comptroller Green,
Here.
President Reed, all present.
Call for our first person.
Okay, so I believe we'll begin with a presentation from the...
Yeah, she calls first person.
Oh, we're not going to have Paul's presentation here today? Okay. I guess you all have the presentation that was passed out there. So we're going to hear from the public now this morning.
Our first speaker is Mr. Jim Ruse. Jim Ruse.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jim Ruse, R-O-O-S. I live at 3012 Lafayette. For 45 years, I ran neighborhood enterprises which managed lower-cost rental housing. I retired last year. About 4,000 families rented from us. Some of them are here today to testify about their experience. Louis and Darlene, I met you when you came to the 40th anniversary of Neighborhood Enterprises. Thank you. Mayor Cruzen, I feel a connection to you through Steve Conway, your chief of staff. When Steve was alderman, we communicated candidly about housing issues in his ward. After 45 years, I will claim, like the Farmers Insurance ad, that I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two.
That's good.
Neighborhood Enterprises successfully repaired and managed lower-cost rental housing. Our practice was to acquire neglected but structurally sound, partially occupied buildings, do selective rehab, and manage them. We became proficient at repair and management, but had difficulty obtaining consistent, permanent financing. I request that you budget $10 million yearly for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and encourage the Affordable Housing Commission to use some of that money in permanent financing for the selective rehab strategy. This will greatly reduce the loss of existing housing and the cost per unit. Here again are documents, Secretary. Here again are documents which give detail about the strategy. I left a set with your aides early last week. By email, tell me if you want these documents sent electronically. Thanks in advance for your attention to this matter. Do you have any questions or comments? Thank you.
Our second speaker is Jim Lutz.
Morning. Thank you for hearing from me. My name is Jim Lutz, L-U-T-Z. I've lived in the city my whole life. I'm retired. In a previous life, I used to work for RHCDA, now RISE, and was the lead developer using low-income housing tax credits, state tax credits, historic tax credits, and developing probably something in a replacement value of $80 million worth of new or gut rehabbed, historic rehab housing in the city of St. Louis County, and in East St. Louis. The low-income housing tax credit is a wonderful program, provides great stability for people moving into the housing that is absolutely wonderful as it's produced, no matter who's doing it, whether that's not-for-profits or for-profits, they're doing that. but I'm here to speak more specifically about what has been a problem. The cost and the complexity of low-income housing tax credits makes the development costs incredible. The investors don't want to do anything unless the project is going to be new construction or gut rehab, and that's understandable because they're going to be in the project for a minimum of 15 years. So they're concerned. They want to have zero risk if it's at all possible. Because of that, the costs continue to grow up. The replacement value, as I've said, on the housing that we did, or that I specifically was the lead on, is probably $70 or $80 million now. If you go back through the period of time that I did that, that's probably closer to like $35 or $40 million. Using the low-income housing tax credit to create new housing for housing that continues to be lost in our community just can't work. We're lucky now if the city of St. Louis sees 70 or 80 new units of low-income housing tax credit on an annual basis. We have a program with the Affordable Housing Commission where money can be used to do fairly inventive things. And one of the things that I would certainly advocate is we have to look at a way to do modest rehab to keep properties from deteriorating and to keep those units online so they're providing affordable housing, but also keeping those number of units that are going on to the low income, onto LRA gone, is to keep that from happening. There are over 2,400 units as of today that are called improved properties that are on LRA's list. I used to work for LRA. We have a very expanded definition of what is an improved property, and I'm sure that hasn't changed. Those properties, for the most part, are always going to need to be gut rehabbed or in a lot of instances torn down. We can't keep allowing units to go into a state of deterioration and abandonment and expect new construction or gut rehab to come in and stabilize these neighborhoods. So I would advocate that additional money, if it's at all possible, go to the Affordable Housing Commission, and that money is set aside specifically to do small-scale rehabilitation, primarily with not-for-profits, but even with the private sector. We need to keep these units online so that they provide good housing and stabilize the communities. Thank you. Question?
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next speaker, Derrick Wislow.
Hi, I'm Derrick Wislow, Wisleder. I'm representing myself, but I have been participating with Homes for All, and I found an interest and a project that I'd like to promote, and it's in the early stages, but I looked and I'm interested in community land trusts, and I did some searching and found 17 U.S. cities within the last year have either started community land trusts or offered their first homes or offered new homes. So from like Miami to Bellingham, Washington to Uniondale, out on Long Island, cities like Lexington and St. Louis County has a community land trust. It's been around a while. They've had some successes, and I think they are in the process of building 41 homes this year to offer. And these are ways to stabilize housing prices long term. So with an initial one-time investment that can be stabilized for low-income housing and homeowners in perpetuity. And so an advantage we have in the St. Louis area would be the land utilization program, because there are a lot of vacancies, there are a lot of properties that might be used. So I'd like to make a case for possibly putting some money towards that. It could be done at different scales. Some of these community land trusts will start with a small number of homes. Others with a bigger budget might start with a larger number of homes. But if we could get seeded to get started, that might be a way to build on this later. Other opportunities in the St. Louis area, I would think with the large universities and the large hospitals, several of both of those categories who are amongst the major employers in the St. Louis area, it would be to their advantage to create opportunities to get low-income employees into homes and housing, and it would do a lot of stabilization for the St. Louis metropolitan area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Burnham.
Good morning. My name is Tom Burnham. I am employed by Peter and Paul Community Services, where I've been since 1985. I've listened to folks make a number of points that I would have made. I would like to point out that it was about 2002, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was created by a referendum vote, and the original legislation stipulated that it be funded at a minimum of $5 million a year. It is only in the last year, for the first time since about 2012, that it has been funded at that level. The fact is, there has also been inflation of between 2.5% and 3% every year along the way. So the purchasing power of that $5 or $4 million, depending upon the year, has seriously eroded. We are in the midst of a push to end homelessness. We have committed to ending veterans' homelessness by the end of this year, actually, specifically by November 11th, and this is a very doable thing. There is one aspect of homelessness that is seldom discussed in talking about the problem, and that is a huge shift in housing stock over the last 50 years, not just in St. Louis, but around the country. And that is the loss of single-room occupancy housing. In Soulard and Lafayette Square and LaSalle 50 years ago, there were more than 24 rooming houses. There is not one today. In just those three neighborhoods, we're talking about a couple hundred units of single-room occupancy housing. The median rent in St. Louis is approaching $700 a month, and when somebody's making minimum wage, they're making a little over $1,200 a month before any deductions are taken out. A critical factor in those rooming houses and residential hotels, that was all private sector. There wasn't a dime of government money going there. I think that if we really want to address the issue of truly affordable housing for very low-income people, we need to use tools like increment financing and abatement to draw the private sector back in, and we need to stipulate to large developers that if they're going to produce so many units of market rate housing, they should include single-room occupancy housing, and it should be stipulated also from the get-go that they partner with agencies like BJC, like Places for People, like the Independent Center, to provide the supportive services that people need to succeed in that type of housing. I think this is a critical factor. I think the city should be allowing tiny houses along the way. I know a developer who tried to do some 10 years ago up off of Jefferson, and he was blocked by opposition from his alderman up there. I know that the North Grand Neighborhood Services built 3 tiny houses last year. I'm not sure if they've been able to get occupancy permits for them, but I think tiny houses and single-room occupancy are going to be a key to really addressing the needs, again, of very low-income people. When the city talks about affordable housing, they're still not talking about the population of people that I serve. And I think if we really want to address the situation, we need to consider a very different approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. If I could, and this is your time to speak, so I'll take 30 seconds. We are increasing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund this year by about 20, just did the arithmetic, about 27%, so it'll be up to $6.6 million. I know that's not $10 million, but it's a significant increase over last year, and last year was a significant increase over the year before. And I appreciate your comments about single-room housing and tiny houses, so thank you.
Chris Wilcox.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Chris Wilcox. I'm here with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition. I wanted to point out that we had been collecting postcards from people in the community who are supporting increasing funding in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So I wanted to make sure that everyone is represented and seen in this. So it's really exciting to see the enthusiasm and the support of the community for these services.
What are the pictures of, I see the postcards, what are the?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And so we support increasing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund because it provides critical services for people who are unhoused and gives people the opportunity to live in healthy homes that they can afford. It provides opportunities to advance equity in the city by providing investments in communities that are not adequately served by the private market. And I want to thank the city for allocating above the required $5 million for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and proposing doing the same this year. We ask that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund be funded at $10 million annually because it represents an opportunity for the St. Louis to be a leader in ensuring that all people have access to safe, healthy homes and are supported to live in a vibrant, diverse, and more equitable city. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund is a local and flexible solution to many persistent issues with homelessness, vacancy, and inequity. The recent decline in emergency shelter has left a great need for the unhoused. The trust fund provides support for the most vulnerable in our communities in this way by providing more funding for emergency shelter and everything on the spectrum up to permanent housing. The recent Equity Indicators report gave us also some important insights in what we can do to advance more equity and opportunity in the city. African American residents are more than three times more likely to live in areas of concentrated poverty, and majority African American neighborhoods have 9 times as many acres of vacant land and buildings in their neighborhoods. And 8% of African American families are spending more than 50% of their income on housing. The trust fund can address all of these issues directly by converting vacant properties into healthy, safe, and attractive homes that are affordable, and also provide services for people to stay in their homes and their communities and to live in any neighborhood in the city. It can also provide some stability for the 1 in 5 children in St. Louis public schools that are housing insecure. Now, each year is a new opportunity to commit to growing the city so that St. Louisans can be ensured to live in affordable homes in any neighborhood, and that we have thriving communities. And the $17 for every dollar spent by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund proves this to be a good investment in our community. So this is why we feel it should be funded at $10 million annually to make a bold commitment to our future. Thank you for your time and for your service to the city of St. Louis.
Thank you.
Gary Newcomer.
Hi, good morning, and thanks for giving me the chance to speak. My name is Gary Newcomer. I'm here representing the Community Builders Network. I think a lot of you are familiar with us, but we're a coalition of community building nonprofits and the organizations that support them. We're also a member of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition, too. I just want to say last year we funded the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, fully funded, and because of that 10 new agencies, or 10 new programs were funded for the first time. That included tenant education, that included rooted property management by social workers, it included housing resources for vulnerable populations in the Central Corridor. So a lot of really great things are going on. Some projects still weren't funded, which is why we're so excited to see that you all are really committed to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, have increased funding. We're very excited about that. We know we still have a little ways to go. We know this is the first step in that path. We're really excited to work with our partners at the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, who are asking for $10 million, which we support. And we're also excited to work with the Affordable Housing Commission, our partners, and you all in making that happen. So thank you, and I'll stick around if you want to talk too.
Thank you.
Tracy F. Spees.
Good morning. My name is Tracy Fantini Spees. I have been a resident. SPIES, yes. I'm a resident of the city of St. Louis for 13 years. I'm a parent of 2 SLPS students, one of whom is a classmate of Tim O'Connell's son, your former chief of staff. I'm also incoming president of the PTO there, a member of Equity Bridge, a group of parents who has come together to seek equity and gifted education for minority students and students of color. I'm a member of the Equity and Inclusion Committee there, and I'm a social worker with HOPE, Housing Options Provided for the Elderly. I've served the poor, homeless, and older adults in St. Louis as a social worker for over 15 years. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here today also to represent and support the Close the Workhouse campaign. I'm a member of the Anti-Racist Organizing Collective. I joined Comptroller Green in her feelings that the workhouse should be closed. I'm here to oppose further spending of St. Louis City funds on operating the workhouse. And I'm calling on all of you to support the immediate closure of this facility, which is unconstitutional because conditions are inhumane, abusive, and violate human and constitutional rights. Our failed system of arrest and incarcerate imposes cash bonds on the poor and people of color who have not been convicted of a crime. These folks are presumed innocent and are being held because they cannot afford to pay cash bail. In addition, our failed system of arrest and incarceration perpetuates the shameful legacy of racism, segregation, targeted policing, and police brutality in the city of St. Louis. This is a legacy which we have to work to end. Closing the workhouse is one step. Over 50% of city funds are currently being spent on the failed system of arrest and incarcerate, which has not made us safer, while less than 1% is spent on the health and human services of our population. The $16 million that can be saved by closing the workhouse must be reinvested in real public safety strategies, such as access to jobs, safe housing, affordable health care, substance abuse treatment, crisis intervention, schools equipped to address all students' needs, and much, much more. Continuing to pour over half our city's budget into this failed system while neglecting the health and human services needs of the poor, sick, mentally ill, jobless, undereducated, unhoused, underemployed, disabled residents only results in a bottomless money pit of mass incarceration, inequality, and suffering. Investing in real public safety campaigns, such as cure violence, not only makes fiscal sense, but it is the right and just course of action. Thank you.
John Chasnoff.
Hi, I'm John Chasnoff, and I'm here as one of the two co-chairs of the Coalition Against Police Crimes and Repression, and I wanted to follow up on the last speaker's comments around our current campaign for real public safety. So CAPCAR and some other social justice organizations in the city started several years ago with a community education program called Reimagining Public Safety, and we asked the question to community members all over the city, what is it that makes you safe? When we talk about public safety, everybody's first thought is about crime and about police. But when we ask people what does it take to really make you feel safe, what we heard was people need adequate health care. They need affordable housing. They need jobs and education. Many of the things that our last speaker spoke about. So we decided to start a campaign for real public safety to see what it was we could do to make people feel really safe in our community. And what we found was that investing in those things that keep people safe are also the same things that get to the root causes of crime. So you cannot have a crime prevention model that's based on disrupting communities, destroying families, particularly in our communities of color, and expect that that's going to build a healthy community with low crime rates. When we look at our current model of arresting and incarcerating, we took what we call the arrest and incarcerate budget, and that included the money for the police department, the jails, the circuit attorney's office, the juvenile justice system. When you add that all up, it comes to 52% of our general fund. And we are already a very heavily policed community. We're 11th in the country for number of police per capita. And what we've gotten as a result of this arrest and incarcerate model is a mass incarceration system that's bursting at the seams and more expensive than our community can handle, and has not adequately solved our problems. Our violent crime rate in particular remains high in the city, and we cannot arrest our way out of this problem. I've had the pleasure of 20 years of social justice organizing here in the city and have worked under the auspices, there were approximately 6 police chiefs during that 20-year period. And every single one of those police chiefs has said we cannot arrest our way out of the problem, but we continue to try to do so. So we believe that we need to open up the taboo question of looking at our policing budget and seeing if the money that's being spent, a huge proportion of our budget, if that money is being spent effectively. One of our problems is that the police department is incredibly non-transparent, and we have not been able to get a real accurate line item budget from the police to see how money is being spent. But we know, for instance, that millions of dollars is going into the real-time intelligence center, millions of dollars every year, and we can't get any data to see if that intelligence center is producing reduced crime in the city. We see in the current budget that it's now $11 million is being spent from the local use tax. That's up $1 million this year. And we question whether or not that money could be more effectively spent by building communities instead of trying to arrest our way out of a problem that we've never been able to succeed in that direction. So lastly, I just wanted to mention one particular program that we're pushing this year. Many people will say to us, well, yes, we need to attack the root causes of crime, but that's a long-term solution and we have a short-term problem. We have been looking very closely at a program called Cure Violence, which is based on the idea that gun violence is a public health issue. And Cure Violence approaches the problem working with community mediators and community de-escalation, and has had tremendous success around the country in both rapidly reducing violent crime and then showing a sustained rate of reduction over a period of time. So we're going to have some more speakers coming up later who are going to talk to you some more about cure violence. But I really hope that you all will take this issue by the horns and look at what's really working and what could work in terms of our violent crime problems and start to get at real solutions. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Montega Simmons.
I told them they wouldn't believe that we didn't plan this, but we did not, just for the record. Let's stick hard to the script. Thank you to the members of the Board of E&A for hosting this space. Unfortunately, we live in a time where direct, transparent public engagement is rare, so we welcome you hosting this space. My name is Montega Simmons, and I am the campaign manager for the campaign to close the workhouse. I am a first-generation St. Louisan. My folks on both sides came here from Mississippi mostly during the 60s. I was born in St. Luke's Hospital, which no longer exists, in 1973, at a time when my family lived on Bayard Avenue, only a few blocks from the Wall Community Center. Only a few years later, my mother moved us just outside the city border in Northwoods, right intersection of Natural Bridge and Lucas and Hunt. And I mentioned the year and time frame because my life largely coincides with a period that saw large amounts of extraction from St. Louis City. Extractions that largely targeted the north and northwest corridors of the city. Those extractions look like the shuttering of Homer G. Phillips, like divestments of banks and civic institutions, of resources like healthcare, public services, and support for quality housing. This sounds familiar to anyone who's heard of the Team 4 plan and who's lived or worked in or close to North City. This history is a context to help us understand where we are today. The campaign to close the workhouse is driving an explicit demand to close the facility because it's inhumane and indefensible, but also because intercommunal violence is epidemic, and the strategy of arrest and caging doesn't address the underlying issues of poverty, trauma, hopelessness, and despair. If we want our community safe, we believe that more cages are not the answer. Closing the workhouse provides an opportunity to invest in things that can truly keep us safe. Community-based programs like Cure Violence, funding the Affordable Housing Trust, and community-based programs that we've seen work before, like Caring Communities. Our city has the capacity to respond and to heal itself if given the opportunity and resources to do so. That healing won't happen in the workhouse or in any cage that you design. None of you were part of the politic that brought about the destruction that began with Team 4, but you have a chance to be part of repairing that devastation. One way to begin that repair: do not fund MSI. This fiscal year, you have a chance to define what this city values. That's a clear statement on how we want to keep our city safe. Each of you has a say in that. Each of you has a stake in that. Each of you has a vote on what future our children will face. A lot of my family actually chose to leave the city over the last 45 years. Not all, but a lot of them. I came back for a while, and others have actually come back. Their children are watching you right now and wondering, are you funding seats for them at the workhouse or in a school, in a community that's designed to really keep them safe? I'm pondering the same question and what the arc of the next 45 years are going to show us. Thank you.
Julie Summer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm really moved by everything I've heard so far, so I'm a little shaken. I apologize. My husband and I moved to St. Louis 11 years ago. We're small business owners. We rehab old apartment buildings and keep them and rent them out. So we're property managers and we manage construction projects and things like that. We love St. Louis. We fell in love with it immediately from the first time we were here. I've also, for a short period, for about a year, owned another business, which was a little bar and restaurant on Cherokee Street. The reason I mention that is because I observed firsthand the incredible generosity of people. People without a lot of money who are still huge tippers, for example, everybody. The spirit of the neighbors I meet, people, total strangers, every good morning is met with a good morning. The spirit of the people of St. Louis has just made me want to build a life here. I can't believe how impressive how everyone here is and the work people are doing. I thank you all for your work. I want to stress as a business owner from a business perspective, because I think that that voice is not often heard in these rooms and in these meetings. My belief that it truly is in everyone's best interest to build community. And frequently, when we saw the closing of the only real emergency shelter in St. Louis, and nothing to replace it, the tragedy that was, and I believe it was last year, we saw a human being die in a dumpster trying to survive a cold night. I believe we saw a human being die in a porta potty. And the image to me of someone trying to just make it through the night in a porta potty is too much to bear. Affordable housing is so important. And I agree with the sentiments of everyone who's spoken so far that bringing dignity and safety to children, to women, to men, don't we all deserve that? I believe that affordable housing, producing and providing it, reduces crime. We have people with money, we have developers, but are they going to be able to rent out their apartments when people are getting carjacked all the time out front? Who wants to live there? And then what's the devastation and crime to the entire family of people who never had a chance anyway? I think I know these are bigger conversations, but providing that health care, addressing the education of students, making sure they're not hungry when they go to school, that they're given meals, and affordable housing. And I'll speak for myself, as a developer, there aren't that many incentives or opportunities for me to find funding, because I'm not a nonprofit, we're just a regular business, but the cost of construction I can't compete with, I can't control. I can try to manage projects well, construction projects, but the cost of construction goes up, the real estate taxes go up. So how can I truly provide affordable housing when a large building might cost $70,000 just for tuck pointing? So I want to work hard. I want to work with the city. I want to work with these great people here to help solve these problems, and I think by providing with basic needs for families, we will do more to curb crime in the city of St. Louis than any workhouse or any punitive. It's all too late by that point, you know what I mean? It's just too late by that point. Let's feed people, let's give them education, let's give them access to a safe, warm place to lay their head, and then let's see what happens. Thank you.
Johnny Bell.
Good afternoon. My name is Johnny Bell. I pastor a church called STL, Restoration Church. The STL is for Saving the Lost. I met Jim Ruse some 20-something years ago. I was a product of an environment of drug addiction, homelessness, robbing, stealing, or whatever comes with that type of lifestyle. And I went into a ministry where they taught me to be a man. They taught me integrity. They taught me character. And I've based my ministry off of that model. And I also go back to the streets. I go in the neighborhoods. I go and talk to people that are drug addicts. One thing that noticed when I first came into ministry. I was 26 years old. I was a 26-year-old boy. I wasn't a man. I was a boy. But I noticed when I walked in the door, there was no one there my age. They were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and even one 70-year-old man that was trying to recover or be restored from drug addiction. And I thought to myself at that time, I don't want to be a 50, 60, 70-year-old drug addict. And so I put my hand to the plow, and I prayed like a crazy man. And I went through the scriptures, through the word, and the men in that ministry began to grab a hold of me. They began to take me up under their wing, and they taught me these things. Number one was spiritual principles. Number two was life skills, how to actually be a man, how to get along with people, how to build relationships, how to study to show myself approved. They taught me work ethic, a bunch of different things. And then the last but not least, they taught me vocational training. In that ministry, I learned to paint. I learned to cut grass. These are things that we did in ministry so that we would have something to keep us busy once we graduated the program. And I remember graduating, and at that time, you have an opportunity to go full-time ministry or to go to work, get your job, save up your money, get you an apartment, and different things like that. Well, I chose full-time ministry. And some type of way, I don't remember how, but we ran into Jim Ruse. And after 3.5 years of being in that program, I ended up getting married to the woman that was running the women's part of that facility. I had a young daughter. She had a young son. He was, I believe he was 10. My daughter was 7. And Jim actually let us go into the house by cleaning it up and remodeling it, and then going ahead and move in and then paying rent later on. But I raised my kids in that house, in that neighborhood on Blaine Street, right across Grand. Some years later, it became what was called Dark Side. And for us, it was a great opportunity for us because we began to minister to the residents in that area, and a lot of people's lives were changed even in that area. And even after that, my kids got older, they went to school, they learned things, and they needed, at that time, low income. My son started having kids, my daughter started having kids. They rented from neighborhood enterprises and different places like that. Now they've gone on to, they've went to school, learned education, got better jobs, and they actually moved out. So what I'm saying is that's always going to be needed. I have 12 men that I'm dealing with right now. My wife has 11 women that she's dealing with right now. Within the next year or so, they're going to need, once they start working, they're going to need low income, and I'm glad that there are places that will allow, that still have low income, because a lot of these people come from a background of drug addiction, they're felonies, they have records and different things like that, and a lot of places will not let them into a certain workforce as well as into the housing because of their background. A lot of people have an attitude, once an addict, always an addict. Well, that's not true. That's not true. It's been proven time and time again that is not true. And I really do believe we need that in our city if we're going to keep, if the life of the city, we have to reach back to help. And I know if it wasn't for those few men that wanted to make a deposit in my life, I wouldn't be standing before you today. And if I didn't have an opportunity to have housing, I don't know where I would be, my wife would be, and my kids would be right now. So that's my testimony. God bless you all.
Lisa Winter.
Hi, my name is Lisa Winter, and I'm feeling wholly inadequate. I feel like you guys are so lucky to have so many community partners and advisors here in this room today, and I hope that you are listening to what they're saying, because I'm inspired. And I think what I'm hearing is people are asking for this budget to reflect the values of our community and our neighborhoods. And honestly, when I looked at the proposed budget, it does not reflect my values, and that concerns me. With over close to 60% of that budget going to what we call public safety, and over 50% of that going to a model that is about surveillance, incarceration, policing, communities, that does not reflect my values. First of all, can we acknowledge that model does not actually prevent crime? It's incapable of preventing crime. It is set up to react to crime. It's set up to incarcerate folks after crime has already been committed. Can we also acknowledge that most of the people in our jails are Black and poor folks, and as a community, we have to ask ourselves, why? When we never address the root causes of poverty and crime, when we never address our city's long history of racism and inequality, and when we only give ourselves one very inadequate tool to deal with lack of education, lack of economic opportunities, we are bound to never have safe, inclusive, vibrant communities that include everyone. When we create budgets that squeeze out other options such as social services with a bloated police and incarceration piece, in my opinion, we will always fail. The good news is that you have a large community of folks that have been working tirelessly day after day after day to fill the gaps that the city has left. And I think what they're asking is for you to meet them halfway. You have the Close the Workhouse campaign that is passionately asking you to stop incarcerating folks for not being able to pay their bail. I ask you to listen to them. You have Capcar, who has that's been working so long in this community to talk about what does public safety actually means. They've done all the research for you. They've done all the work for you. And they are bringing this Cure Violence campaign for you. And they're asking that you fund it, and that you research it, and that you fund it. And I ask you to do that also. You have folks from the community that are asking you to help us house unhoused folks, to fund the housing, affordable housing fund at $10 million. Am I asking you also to do that? You have folks that have been working for 10, 15, 20 years in this community to make sure that unhoused folks do not sleep on the street. They're telling you that the social services programs in this community are lacking. They're telling you that we do not have an emergency shelter to house those folks and to keep them from dying on the streets, and I'm asking you to listen to them. A budget is the city's way of showing what it prioritizes and what is its commitment to its city members. And your budget reflects what you prioritize and what you care about. And I am asking you as a city leadership to have a courageous budget, a budget that reflects the values that you are hearing in this room. And I'm asking you to sorry, I'm so nervous. I am asking you to be the leadership that our city needs to deal with the deep systems of inequality that we have currently, and to rise up to that challenge and give us strategies that are actually going to give us long-term change. Thanks.
Joseph Brown.
Take your time.
It's still morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm simply here at the behest of Mr. Jim Ruse to maybe add a little levity to it. He had this brilliant idea several years ago to drop off some proposals for affordable housing to Missouri legislators, and I believe the Secretary of State? No, Governor. Governor, okay. My bad. To put an exclamation point on this, we were going to ride bicycles from St. Louis area to Jeff City in 2 days. Jim didn't bring a spare tube, a patch kit, and air. I patched his tube 3 times. The 4th time he got a flat, he called his wife up in Jeff City and just said, "Come get us." That's the only reason I'm here. If Jim tells you something about affordable housing, it's gospel. Believe him. One more quick point, if I can. The gentleman sitting to the mayor's left, weren't you at a cycling savvy meeting one evening telling us about city streets and the little hockey pucks? It works. It works.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting a staunch conservative speak in front of a room I guess is 99% Democrat.
Susie Chesnoff.
Apcar, and I'm here. I know there's been tons of facts that have already been given to you all, and I don't want to repeat any of those. What I want to talk about is common sense. When you continually support a status quo position that is not working, there's something fundamentally wrong. For some reason in this country, we just keep pouring money and keep pouring time and effort and energy into failed systems. And I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure why we feel so dedicated to failed systems. It doesn't make sense. When you have the chief of police for the last 7 police chiefs saying you cannot arrest and incarcerate yourself out of this problem, when you have police officers saying they're overwhelmed, they're overburdened, and they're not social workers, we need to listen to that. We need to shift our priorities in a way that just is common sense. So instead of always taking the back end and trying to arrest and incarcerate, which is not working, it's destroying families, it's destroying individuals, it's destroying communities. If we would take that money and simply put it into what builds communities and builds families, we would be on a path that would produce less need for arrest and incarcerate. So I'm just asking you to take a common sense approach to the information that you're being given. Thank you.
Derrick Laney.
Good morning. My name is Derrick Laney, and I'm a member of the steering committee of the Coalition Against Police Crimes and Repression. You've heard from several of our members and other people who we work closely with regarding what our priorities are for the budget. I'm here to speak specifically about the campaign that was mentioned, Cure Violence, and that's a program that we think that the city would do well to invest money in and perhaps look at where we're spending money that is not yielding results and look at this program as something that might be worthy of our money. So Cure Violence is an international program. It is ranked in the top 10 NGOs in the world. That's a fact that I just recently learned. Cure Violence, it stops the spread of violence by using methods and strategies that are associated with disease control. So it approaches violent crime as a public health issue rather than a public safety issue. It is evidence-based, and it utilizes trained, credible messengers, often from the areas that are highly impacted with violent crime. It has yielded results, often in the first year, from a 55% up to 80% reduction in gun violence. Cure Violence is a model that has been implemented by several cities in the United States, including Baltimore, Camden, New Jersey, Durham, North Carolina, Kansas City, New Orleans, Omaha, Philadelphia, and San Antonio. It is also around the world in several countries that they've implemented to great success, reducing violent crime in those countries. Cure Violence has 5 key components. One, they identify the potential violent incidents and they interrupt them. They use credible messengers from the community to talk to people, offer them services, and interrupt the patterns of violence. 2, it provides ongoing and behavioral change and support to the highest risk individuals in a community. Number 3, they change community norms. Those norms that allow, encourage, and exacerbate violent crime. 4, they continually analyze the data, and it's very data-driven, very evidence-based. There are scientific studies that show its effectiveness. They analyze that data in order to properly implement the program and to identify the changes in the patterns and the level of violence in communities. So it continues to track what's going on in order to make sure that it stays an effective program. And finally, 5, they provide ongoing training and technical assistance to workers and to the program managers. We highly recommend that the city look into this program and fund it for St. Louis. CAPCAR has actually extended an invitation to the Cure Violence Program to come to St. Louis the week of May 14th through the 16th, those 3 days, to do an assessment. And we invite city officials to join us in learning more about the program and seeing how it can actually be implemented in St. Louis and the results that it could yield. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Kendra Tatum.
Thank you for your time. My name is Kendra Tatum. I work for the Organization for Black Struggle. I'm going to piggyback on what Derrick was saying and give you even more pointers on why to support the Cure Violence program as far as its effectiveness. Cure Violence in communities that have taken on this program have gone to zero shootings over the amount of 3 years. You can see the effectiveness of this program in as little as 1 month, and again, maintained throughout the program. There's a huge turn on investment when it comes to the Cure Violence model. For example, there's $18 saved for every $1 that's invested. So we'll definitely be seeing more bang for our buck than the model that we're currently supporting under an arrest and incarcerate model. In addition, I want to talk more specifically about the changes that have been made in specific cities all over the U.S. For example, in Chicago, there's a 41 to 73% reduction in shootings and killings across 7 communities. There's a 100% reduction in retaliation killings in 5 of the 8 communities. In Philadelphia, there's a 30% reduction in shootings. There's also Baltimore and New York City, where there's a 56% reduction in killings and 63% reduction in shootings in New York City. So I hope that you all will really consider taking on this model and supporting us in May.
Dennis Schultz.
Good morning, all. My name is Dennis Schultz, and I am also with Homes for All, a tenant and resident advocacy group recently formed in the St. Louis area. And I'm here to re-emphasize the earlier made point about community land trusts and why they're a good idea for housing affordability going forward. Now, a community land trust is a nonprofit, community-based organization that is designed to ensure community stewardship of land and real estate. CLTs can be used for many types of land development, including parks, community gardens, commercial and retail spaces, but their primary purpose has and always will be to ensure long-term affordability of housing. Now, CLTs are instrumental in building community wealth, especially for communities that have not had the opportunity to build generational wealth, because they provide low and moderate income people the opportunity to build credit and equity through home ownership. They do this by keeping the homes and the land outside of the larger real estate market, ensuring that residents will not be displaced by outside development, land speculation, or gentrifying forces. Thanks to the maintainment of low housing prices within CLTs, the foreclosure rates in CLTs have been as much as 90% less than foreclosure rates for your traditional market-based mortgages. Last year, Forbes magazine identified Gravois Park and Fox Park, of which I am a resident, as attractive areas for real estate development. These are key areas where housing stock can be acquired, rehabilitated, and maintained at an affordable price to ensure the continuing existence and improvement of the communities that already inhabit and have for generations inhabited these areas, protecting them from any displacing investors that would follow Forbes' advice. And through the tool of the CLT, these communities would be given the power to direct the manner in which their neighborhoods change, develop, and improve for generations going forward. I would like to reemphasize the point that's already been made multiple times, that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund should be funded at $10 million annually, and that a portion of those $10 million be directed towards the implementation of a community land trust in the St. Louis City area, so as to protect communities that already exist and to give them opportunities to thrive in a way that they feel is best. At Homes for All, we believe that those who are most impacted by the issues of housing inaffordability, injustice, and discrimination are those who are best set to lead. And so by putting the power of land development and use into the hands of the communities, we can best create vibrant communities, which is best for everybody in the St. Louis area, in our nation, and in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rhonda Keaton.
How you doing? Thank you for this opportunity.
Good morning.
I'm speaking, good morning. I'm speaking, Jim Ruse asked me to come. I was a renter of his, a neighborhood enterprise. And over 20 years ago, that's how young I am and how old he is. I was able to rent, it was a 2-family flat turned into 1 unit. I had 8 rooms, 4 bedrooms and 2 full baths and a basement. And also a carport in the back for $425. And I was able to maintain that and my utilities. My children, I worked at the post office, and my children were able to be in extracurricular activities, football, basketball, boxing, and I had 2 that were Muni kids, that's theater. And I was able to raise them and work and maintain my home, and also I don't have no fancy speech or long words. It's needed. And I stand before you on behalf of those that have low wages and couldn't take off to be here to put a face to the voice or the need. Just like now, I was able to take off. Well, I haven't worked in about 8 years. Upon maintaining my kids, they all productive. All of them had scholarships. Nebraska State. I had one that was a Cornhusker. Tennessee State University, Hurstow, and my daughter in Laguna Hills in California. 2 of them are not here, but they're able to send money back and help me. My mother is a double amputee, and now I'm in position. I still rent from them that my children can help with my mother. We have steps going into the home that we rent, and they come by and take her up and down as she goes to dialysis and doctor's appointments. And also, up on that, the other 2 work for Clayco. They have become productive citizens. I say that the low rent, it was able for me to maintain, to be there as a parent, and then promoted independence and unity. The unity within, how could I say this? Each child had their own personality and their own person, and that I didn't have the stress of certain things I was able to maintain. And I was able to pour into them character development, things that was needed to take them from students to leadership. I don't have no, how can I say this? It solidifies. I have family survival. It promotes unity and independence. They one and the same. It is, because we as a family work together, and also now they are independent and they're able to put back into the home, and then it solidifies a foundation of unity. And then I put down the cost of living rises, but the wages don't. They don't. And then up on that, and then we face being disincluded as the land is development. I was over there when it was pretty much ran down. It was, but somebody saw I had to come through, and I was a product of eminent domain, and I lived at 48 Blaine, then I moved down the street to 4222 Blaine, and they came on down through there, and this was within a 17-year time frame, and now I'm somewhere off Oregon and Potomac, and they coming through there. They have funds to remove and relocate the residents, and then to renovate, why come we that's already been there and renting, why come it's not anything set aside for us? But they'll let the buildings around us go down, then come through and buy it at a low cost, or as I'm learning now about buying homes on the programs that's going on about buying the homes and this or that. I wasn't aware of that, but you know, I'm working to maintain and going forth, and then the sickness came through. I was able to, not only my mother, my father as well, I was able to look after them, look after both of my parents. My father has passed on. Let me see. Well, find it for the low income, find it to, and also this ties into the schools about they find money to renovate whole neighborhoods and build those homes that some of us, I wasn't worried about any credit or however to buy a home. You know, it was survival for me and my children. And then when they build those homes, it's not ideal for us to come by and rent them, or else we don't become renters to homeowners. It's lack of education or knowledge or information or access as well. But it was designed to move us out as they come in, where they saw value and productivity in their community with it ran down. Why come those that was there that was productive, why we couldn't stay and be afforded the opportunities for those homes or the renovation? But the where I was at, it was sound. It was sound. It wasn't any structural problems or, you know, window installation, all that. I had a pretty nice building. What else? Wrap this up. About inclusion, all races, class, and status have something important to offer, and that we really are better living and learning together, because we can live and learn from each other. Just like I was a resident there, and the new ones coming in, I saw that building was empty. I moved in there March of '99. Why? March of '99, 2012. I'm talking to the man. He was able to buy that house for $1 and renovate it. And I know he got all type of tax breaks and whatever it was. Why come as they coming through with this, those who not there, I don't see where they having these meetings. There is not any type of advertisement or signs in the yard, somebody knocking on the door, passing out flyers to say, okay, this is the idea of coming through doing this. Somebody having it somewhere. Somebody see an eye for these ran down communities or buildings to come through and redo whole neighborhoods, and there go us, we all. What else? And also, as you allocate these funds, thank you for the increase, that it's things in place to move tenants out. What about these predatory landlords that know that those with low income also lack resources or education, and they prey on them about, it was a young lady where when it rained, her door was swelled and she wasn't able to lock it, and the landlord wanted her to pay for that to get it done. Or when it rained, her basement would flood. And I talked to her about renter's insurance and things of that nature. And also, stay on him. Whatever he's doing for you, it's something there for you to go back and hold him accountable and responsible for what he's not doing. What else? Well, I'll wrap this up on this. Embracing all, committed to all, providing for all, belonging to all. Have a blessed day.
Rhonda, thank you. Congratulations on having a great family and taking care of your family so well. Congratulations on that. Thank you for your comments. Good job. Okay. That is all of our speakers for today. We thank you all for being here and for expressing your thoughts and your concerns. I think we're all better for hearing from you.
And I guess we'll comment now. Mary, would you like to go first?
You may go first.
Thank you. I really wanted to say a lot of things I've heard is heartfelt from you. I would say all of what I heard. So thank you. Thank you for bringing your concerns, bringing your time. Some of you were probably not making money right now because you're here. So thank you for that. You all pay our salaries. Everybody on the other side of here, your taxes pay our salary. We're getting paid. And I have to say that because that's not true for you over here, okay? And so I hear you. I hear you when you say we need a community that's committed to providing affordable housing. We need a community that is going to look at alternatives in our public safety system. And I did not come to my decision to close MSI easy or on the flip or on the fly. I did my due diligence. I did my homework before I came out and made the statements to close MSI because I know it's doable. I know that it's doable within months instead of years. And about my background as the comptroller, I didn't get here as an outsider. In this particular job, I came up through the ranks. I worked for Circuit Court for 8 years, regular employee. I worked as the budget director of the city of St. Louis, which in my mind is the best job you could ever have, Paul Payne. It's the best job you can ever have. Now, the secret is, where else you going to learn where all the money is? Unless you're the budget director. I was that. And now as comptroller for the last 24 years, I've seen a lot about how things work within how the money is spent and how things really, could be better. When I was budget director in 1995, that was the year right before I became comptroller, I served on a committee with then Mayor Bosley, Capital Committee. The Capital Committee, we had to study how to cure a federal court case. We were under court order to shut down this old city jail. You remember that old city jail on 14? Shut it down. Federal Judge Carol Jackson, then Federal Judge Cahill, or it might have been vice versa, Cahill, then Carol Jackson. We were under orders. Our plan that we reported to the mayor was we can do this at the MSI location. We can close, tear down MSI, and build a modern facility. That was the plan that we brought to Mayor Bosley in 1995. And we submitted that plan to the other departments and public safety and the judges and all of that. Circuit judges said no. We must, according to the circuit judges, said they wanted it, and they said it like this: you must have it downtown. So then we had to scrap that. Locating it out at a new facility out of MSI meant that it would be big, modern, and we already had a model because St. Louis County had their Justice Center already built. So we knew what we were looking to do, but we had to put it in a footprint downtown St. Louis, and so we started looking. We had the election board right out here across the street. We had to say, okay, we own that. We're going to take down the election board, and it was a surface parking lot. That's how we got the Justice Center downtown, and then we got money to improve MSI. That was 20 years ago. Now we're in 2019. And our current mayor has put a lot of effort into reducing the numbers at MSI. When I saw that work being done. I applaud it. And I talked to the chief of staff, which is, Conway, and I told him, I said, Conway, we are now within 200 or so at MSI. It's time to close it down. And I said that based on my knowledge of all these 20-something years of understanding the numbers and how they work in the city. So it is a complicated system is what you're hearing about how housing, male, female, criminal gang, and this and that, that's going to be inherited in the system no matter what. It was complicated in 1914. It's complicated in 2019. So that is, in law terms, a red herring. Throw that out as not an issue to stand in the way of doing the right thing. The right thing is to shut down MSI. And I didn't mean, Madam Mayor, to go into this, but it's on my heart, and so I'm saying it. And I'm not saying close it down today, and I don't think any of you people are saying close it down today. The first thing you got to do is plan. You got to put a plan, and you can't plan unless you get some people to start doing it. You got a lot of departments that have to be involved. You got to involve your judges. You got to involve your federal judges and your federal courts and your criminal justice professionals like your circuit attorney type people and all the academics and people that can look at our city and say, yes, tear that down and provide alternatives for what the new criminal justice system is going to be looking like on the horizon, say 10 to 20 years from now. We don't know that, but what we do know and what we have known for 20 years is we need to shut down MSI, and it's time to do it. If we had determined that in 1995, it's time to do it. It's time to plan for it. This budget does reflect same old way. This is not, there's nothing in here about going towards a plan. It should be. Also, I'm not afraid to say that cure ought to be looked at. You talked about, I don't know how many people talked about it. I'm not afraid to say that you guys have put your time in. You did the research. We've got employees that could also kind of join you and to, maybe visit with and maybe even formally have those discussions in May. As you say, people are coming in. And possibly there could be opportunities for dollars in this budget. And I know Paul is he covers his mouth. So, but because he balanced it. And anytime you got a balanced budget, you're proud. And I applaud Paul for his consistent determination to be fair and balanced, because this is a great budget. But it could be better, and to express better what you guys have brought to us today. And I also, want to just say that the affordable housing piece has helped a lot of needy people that need houses in our community. And, I want to congratulate Jim Ruse. I sat down with you years ago and helped you, with that sign on that wall. Remember that? In the Harmon days. And then, that was, and then we did come to your 40th anniversary. And Louis Reed was new on the scene at the time. He didn't know what he was doing. Neither did I. But what we did know is that, at least I'll speak for myself, I don't want to speak for Louis, is that this is not about us. What our jobs should reflect is about what your needs are. Yes. And so I will continue to do what I can to do as much good as I can. And that's all I can do. And I pledge that to you once again. And thank you.
Anybody have anything else? Thank you all for being here. I think we could use a motion.
Yes. I want to second all the stuff that everybody said here, the comptroller and others. And it's what we do every year in trying to better refine this budget to meet, you know, the needs of people all throughout the city of St. Louis. It's been a difficult task to do so, and I think we can all agree that we have made some incremental steps and some headway. But none of those things, any of these successes that we've seen, Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which didn't exist before, it exists now, those things, all these things, these successes happen in conjunction with the public, and because of folks like you that show up and let your voices be heard, has laid the groundwork and continues to lay the groundwork for these improvements that we see throughout our city. I think that we will see a time that the budget will totally shift, and you can see some movement toward that effort now. And I'm going to join the comptroller in commending the current mayor for working to reduce the numbers within the workhouse. I think we have to maintain a strong focus on criminal justice reform. And, as a father of four, I think about how that impacts not just my kids, but their friends and my relatives, and people all throughout the city are being impacted by an unfair criminal justice system daily. It's happened just during the time that we've been in this meeting. All right. So I think that has to be a focus, and that is not going to change on its own. It's going to change when you continue doing what you're doing, when you show up and you hold everybody accountable. That's when things move. But it's also important that we understand that we're in a partnership, and through that partnership, we will build a better, stronger, safer, more unified St. Louis. To Capcar, John, and all the folks that showed up here that brought up Cure Violence, I am 1,000% in support of that. We have to get that done. And I see a time we're going to get it done. With that, again, thank you so much. And having sat on ENA for the number of years that I've sat on ENA, it does my heart so much good to look out in this audience and see more than two people. I mean, up until a year ago, we would literally have two people. This meeting was over within 4 minutes. And to see this amount of organization in the city and this type of turnout, that tells me that things are changing, and they're changing for the better. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I would just say one thing, not to belabor any of these points, which is that we have made progress in the last 2 years. We've made a lot of progress. We will make a lot more. We are committed to making the progress in all of the areas that you have brought up to us, and we'll make more. It's only because of the progress that we have made in the last couple of years that we're even able to consider some of the things that you've brought up today. So thank you for being here. Motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn this session.
Second. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Thank you all.